"Why did you bring your kids here?" the poor widow whispered on blind date. The CEO smiled. The small Italian restaurant on Maple Street smelled like rosemary and fresh-baked bread. It was the kind of place with flickering candles, handwritten menus, and string lights glowing like quiet stars above each table. A waitress in a black apron stood near the host's stand, scribbling on her notepad. Lucy Carter sat by the window, hands folded tightly in her lap. She wore a soft blue sweater, a little frayed at the sleeves, and a long floral skirt that brushed her ankles. Her golden hair curled loosely around her shoulders, and her pale blue eyes, though kind, carried a quiet grief beneath their surface. She had arrived early, not out of eagerness, but out of anxiety. It had taken her 3 months to agree to this blind date. 3 months of telling herself she was not betraying the past. That meeting someone knew did not mean forgetting. Across the table sat a single glass of water and a small paper bag she brought with her. Inside, 2 homemade cookies. A gesture, nothing more. Something her late husband might have teased her about, saying it made her look like someone's grandma. The restaurant door chimed. She glanced up, then froze. A tall man stepped inside, not alone, but with 2 little girls, identical twins, maybe 4 years old. One clutched a stuffed fox, the other dragged a rainbow-stripped backpack that was clearly too big for her. They looked sleepy, bundled in pastel jackets, cheeks rosy from the evening chill. The waitress blinked, whispering under her breath as she approached, "He brought kids to a blind date?" The man glanced around, then met Lucy's eyes. His expression was calm, unreadable. He nodded politely at the hostess, then led the girls across the room. Every step toward her table made Lucy's stomach twist. He was handsome, even in worn jeans and a navy hoodie. But that was not what unsettled her. It was the children. Was this a misunderstanding? Was this a misunderstanding? He reached the table. "Hi, Lucy?" She nodded slowly. "Yes. I'm Ethan," he said gently, his voice deep but soft. "Sorry for the unconventional entrance." Without hesitation, he knelt beside one of the girls, unzipping her jacket and brushing a leaf from her curly hair. The other climbed into the seat next to Lucy, bold as ever, and placed her stuffed fox on the table, like a dining companion. Lucy tried to keep her expression steady, but her voice dropped to a whisper. "Why did you bring your kids here?" Ethan looked up, still crouched beside the booster seat. He smiled, not embarrassed, not defensive, but genuinely. "Because they are part of me." Lucy stared at him. She had expected awkward small talk. Maybe a man who was too pushy or too nervous. She had not expected this. A stranger with soft eyes, 2 sleepy daughters, and a sentence that somehow did not sound like an apology, but a truth. She glanced at the girls. One was now coloring on a napkin with a crayon she had pulled from her coat pocket. The other was whispering to her stuffed fox. And without meaning to, Lucy felt something shift. Just a little, not quite comfort. Not yet, but something like curiosity. Lucy had never expected to be here again. Not in a restaurant, not on a date, not sitting across from a stranger while her hands trembled under the table. But life, she had learned, never asked for permission before unraveling everything. She was 29, a librarian, a widow. Her husband Mark had died in a car accident 3 years ago. They had just painted the nursery, just picked out a name. The baby had not survived the trauma. And after that, Lucy had folded in on herself, like pages in a book left out in the rain. She worked part-time now at a small public library 5 blocks from her apartment. The pay was meager, but it was peaceful. She liked the smell of old paper, the quiet questions from curious children, the routine of restocking shelves no one noticed. It was safe, predictable. Tonight, she had picked the restaurant for a reason. It was within walking distance. Her car needed repairs she could not afford, and she did not feel right spending money on a cab for something she did not truly believe would go anywhere. The app had been a whim, a moment of courage mixed with loneliness. She had told herself, just one evening, just one dinner, no expectations. And then there was Ethan Blake. His profile was plain. No polished selfies, no shirtless gym shots. Just a simple photo of him sitting on a park bench, blurry at the edges, with a note. Single dad. Likes pancakes and bedtime stories. Looking for kindness, not perfection. That had stopped her. She messaged first. He replied slowly, thoughtfully. They talked about books, about how kids always seem to lose one shoe at a time, about how hard it was to find real conversation in a world of filters and facades. He told her he was between jobs, raising twin girls on his own. He never mentioned money, never name-dropped, never tried to impress her. What Lucy did not know was that Ethan Blake was not unemployed. He was the CEO and founder of Eden Grow Organics, a national health food company with stores in 11 states and growing. His face had been on magazine covers. His name trended every time a new store opened. Interesting. There's a civil war on her. But that was not the man he brought to dinner. Tonight, he wore jeans and an old hoodie. Drove a 2007 Toyota Camry he borrowed from his assistant. No driver, no sleek black town car, no designer shoes. Just him and his girls. Because the babysitter canceled last minute. He had almost called off the date. But something in Lucy's messages had kept him steady. Her words were calm, kind. She never asked what he did for a living. She asked what bedtime stories his daughters liked. She asked if he liked cloudy days. He realized then, if someone was going to care, he needed them to care without the headlines. So he arrived with Ella and Emma, 4-year-old twin hurricanes of energy and wonder. Ella liked dinosaurs and strawberry milk. Emma adored glitter and bugs. They came with sticky fingers, crumpled coloring books, and a stubborn belief that their daddy could fix anything. He had not dated since losing Julia, his wife. It had been 5 years, and though the sharpness of the grief had softened, it still echoed. In the girl's questions, in his own quiet moments, in the fact that he never wore his wedding ring but still kept it in a box by his nightstand. He sat down across from Lucy that night not as a CEO, but as a man who was tired of pretending. Lucy, watching him now, noticed the soft way he helped one twin with her coat, then gently straightened the other's pigtails. His smile was small, worn in, like a favorite pair of shoes. He looked up, catching her gaze. "I hope this is not too much," he said, nodding toward the girls. "It is just. I did not want to cancel, and I figured if you were willing to meet a stranger for dinner, maybe you would not mind a couple of tag-alongs." Lucy blinked. Something inside her loosened just slightly. "No," she said softly. "It is okay." And somehow it was the chaos, the surprise, the children. It was not what she expected. But then again, nothing about her life had gone as expected, and maybe that was the point. Lucy sat up straighter, unsure at first how to respond. Her eyes darted between the two little girls seated across the table, one clutching a crumpled napkin, the other humming softly while peeling the paper off a straw. Her hand hesitated over her purse before she remembered the small pack of fruit chews she had slipped in earlier, a habit from her days working with children's reading groups. "Would you two like some candy?" she asked gently. The girls' eyes lit up. Lucy tore open the package and gave them each a piece, smiling as their hands reached out eagerly but politely. "I'm Lucy," she added, her voice a little steadier now. "I'm Emma," chirped the girl on the left. "And I'm Ella," said the other, slightly quieter but with the same curious stare. Ethan said nothing, just watched with a calmness that somehow eased the tension in Lucy's shoulders. He didn't correct them, didn't explain, just let the moment be. Lucy reached across the table with a napkin and carefully wiped a bit of apple juice from Emma's chin. "There," she said softly, "all set for dinner." Emma looked at her for a long second, then asked, in that innocent way children have of turning hearts upside down, "Are you our new mommy?" Lucy froze. Ethan sat up a little, mouth parting as if to step in, but Lucy beat him to it with a nervous chuckle. "Oh no, sweetie," she said, shaking her head gently. "I'm just someone who likes crayons and bedtime stories." The girls giggled, and just like that, the awkward tension in the air dissolved. Ethan leaned back, exhaling quietly. It was the first time Lucy had seen the man truly relax. He gave her a look, soft, grateful. It lasted only a few seconds, but it carried weight. A quiet kind of appreciation, like he had just witnessed something important. Dinner continued, simple but warm. The twins played with the crayons the hostess had brought over, scribbling uneven shapes on paper placemats, while Lucy helped cut their pasta into smaller bites. She didn't realize how natural it felt, wiping sticky fingers, offering sips of water, nodding along to a story about a magic bunny Ella insisted lived under their couch. And somewhere between refilling Emma's cup and helping Ella find her dropped spoon, Lucy forgot she had come to the restaurant feeling alone. "I used to dream of this," she said suddenly, more to herself than to anyone else. Dinner, with little feet swinging under the table, spaghetti sauce on cheeks, a soft voice calling me Mom. Ethan's hands paused, mid-make motion. She looked down, swallowed. "But I can't have children. I lost my baby before I ever got to hold them, and that was it." Silence followed, gentle but deep. Ethan's gaze lowered. When he finally looked at her, his eyes weren't full of pity. They held something quieter, something that said he understood what it meant to lose something you had built your future around. "I'm sorry," he said. "That's not fair." "No," she replied, her voice trembling. "It's not." For a moment, there were no twins, no crayons, no clinking dishes from other tables. Just two people quietly grieving things they could never change. And then Ella giggled loudly at something on her placemat. Emma joined in. Lucy turned to look and found they had drawn a picture of a rabbit wearing sunglasses and riding a bicycle. She laughed, so did Ethan, and somehow it felt like the most real thing that had happened to her in years. Lucy leaned in, her sleeves slightly rolled up as she tore small pieces from a warm bread roll and placed them gently on the girls' plates. "Try dipping it in the soup," she whispered with a wink, her voice soft and playful. Ella followed her lead, cautiously dipping her piece and taking a bite. Her eyes lit up. Otana laughed. "I like it," she declared, her voice full of surprise. Ethan watched silently from across the table, his heart slowly unraveling. He had seen nannies try too hard, dates smile too tightly, friends pat his daughters on the head like fragile dolls. But Lucy was just here, present, effortless. She pulled out a small pack of princess stickers from her purse and slid it across the table. "I always carry a few," she said with a shrug. "You never know when a dull dinner needs a bit of magic." Emma squealed in delight and began peeling the stickers, carefully placing one on her napkin. "This one's you," she said to Lucy, holding up a sticker of a blonde princess with a pink gown. "Me?" Lucy laughed. "Oh, I feel honored. I'll do my best to rule the kingdom wisely." Ethan chuckled. The sound came from his chest, not just his mouth. It had been a while since he had laughed like that. Not out of politeness, not out of obligation, but because joy had quietly crept into the room. As the girls became absorbed in decorating their napkins with flowers and tiaras, Lucy turned slightly toward Ethan. "They're amazing," she said, sincere and soft. "They're the best part of me." A pause. "And you're doing an incredible job," she added. He blinked. Compliments usually bounced off him, but this one settled deeply. When dinner began to wind down, the twins were still chattering, their napkins now transformed into sticker gardens. A server approached, placing a leather-bound check folder on the edge of the table. "Take your time," he said politely, then disappeared into the crowd. Ethan reached into the back pocket of his faded jeans. His fingers froze. No wallet. His mind raced. He had switched jeans last minute, trying to match the single dad who drives a Honda look. His wallet was still in the suit pocket back home. He patted his jacket. Nothing. Panic prickled at the edges of his calm demeanor. Lucy noticed. She saw his hesitation, the slight crease in his brow, the way his eyes flicked toward the check, then toward the girls. Without a word, she reached into her purse, pulled out a card and slid it into the folder. Ethan looked up, startled. "You?" She leaned in slightly, her voice just above a whisper. "It's okay," she said, eyes warm. "You gave me laughter tonight. That's priceless." He sat back, stunned. She did not ask why he could not pay. She did not look smug. She simply closed the folder and placed it at the edge of the table for the server to collect. She had no idea who he was. To her, he was just a tired man with twins and a missing wallet. And she paid anyway. Not because she was trying to impress, not because she expected anything in return, but because that is what kind people do when they see someone stumble. "Thank you," he said quietly, the words barely audible over the clatter of dishes. Lucy smiled. "Just promise me you'll tip well next time." He laughed. The server returned, nodded politely, and took the check. The girls were now yawning, their energy winding down like a toy losing battery. As they gathered their things, Lucy helped Emma with her coat, gently tucking her scarf into place. "You look like a marshmallow," she said playfully. Emma giggled. As they walked out of the restaurant, Ethan held the door open, the night air crisp and cool around them. Lucy pulled her jacket tighter. "That was different," she said, turning to him as they reached the sidewalk. "Yeah," Ethan nodded. "It was." But different, in this case, did not mean awkward. It meant surprising, comfortable, unexpectedly right. As she waved goodbye and turned toward the bus stop, Ethan watched her go. A woman who wiped messy fingers without flinching, who paid a bill with grace, who treated his daughters not like baggage but like people. He had come here fearing judgment. Instead, he had found a kind of quiet acceptance, and it shook him more than anything had in a long time. The children's section of the city library smelled like paper, glue sticks, and cinnamon from the small bakery cart near the door. Lucy sat cross-legged on a rainbow rug, a circle of little ones gathered around her. Her voice danced through the air as she read aloud from The Adventures of Stanley the Brave, complete with silly voices and wide animated eyes. Laughter erupted when she mimicked the dragon sneezing glitter. Outside the reading room, Ethan paused. He had not planned to come. The twins had mentioned Lucy once, then twice, then again while coloring on the kitchen floor. "She reads better than Daddy," Emma had declared. "She does the dragon voice," Ella added with a giggle. Now here he was, standing in the hallway of a place he had not stepped foot in since his college days, holding both girls' hands while they pulled eagerly toward the sound of Lucy's voice. "There she is," Emma gasped. Before Ethan could say anything, both girls took off like rockets through the open door. "Miss Lucy! Miss Lucy!" they shouted in unison, crashing into her with joy. Lucy blinked in surprise, nearly dropping the book. Then she laughed, a soft, glowing sound, and pulled them into a hug. "Well, hello there, my favorite princesses," she smiled, brushing a curl from Ella's cheek. Ethan stepped in a moment later, slightly sheepish. "Hope this isn't breaking library etiquette." Lucy stood, dusting off her skirt. "As long as you whisper with enthusiasm," she teased. He smiled. "Then I think we're safe." After story time, Lucy helped the girls pick out new books, offering gentle suggestions and letting them choose what they wanted, even if it meant 5 books about frogs. She moved between the shelves like she belonged there, a part of the quiet magic the library held. Ethan watched from a distance. She did not try to win them over. She already had. "Do you have time for coffee?" he asked as they checked out books. She glanced at the clock. "I can do better. There's a bakery 2 blocks down. The girls might like a cookie." That was how they ended up in a small, family-run cafe with pink chairs and handwritten menus. Ethan bought a box of frosted cookies, and the girls settled at the table with their books. Lucy stirred her tea while Ethan unwrapped a napkin and paused. Inside was a folded piece of paper, scribbled with crayon drawings. 3 figures, a tall man, a woman with yellow hair, and 2 small girls. Red hearts floated all around them. In shaky, colorful letters, it read, "Us with hearts. Please come again." He turned the drawing toward Lucy. She covered her mouth. Emma grinned. "We made it for you last night. I did the hearts." "And I did the spelling," Ella added proudly. Lucy ran her fingers lightly across the paper, her touch soft, reverent, like she was holding something fragile. I don't know what to say. You don't have to, Ethan said quietly. She looked up at him, eyes glassy. There were power lines in the air. And what the hell was it? She extricated the cell from the earth. Why me? She asked, the words barely louder than a breath. Ethan's voice was steady. Because you never tried to impress, and yet impressed us all. His eyes were damp, and for the first time since Julia's death, he felt something blooming. Not guilt, not memory, but something new, something possible. The library's break room was quiet, except for the low hum of the vending machine and the occasional shuffle of pages being turned. The fluorescent lights flickered softly overhead, casting a pale glow on the linoleum floor. Lucy sat alone at the corner table, flipping through a stack of returned books that needed reshelving. Her movements were mechanical, her mind somewhere else entirely, still half filled with memories of the last evening she had spent at Ethan's little countryside home. The laughter, the warmth, the way Emma had crawled into her lap and fallen asleep mid-story. She did not expect the day to change with a single sentence. "Hey, Lucy!" Miriam's voice broke the stillness. Her colleague from the front desk walked in, holding her phone tightly, her expression a mix of curiosity and hesitation. "You're still seeing that guy, right, Ethan?" Lucy looked up, a small smile tugging at her lips. "Yes. Why?" Miriam paused, then approached slowly. "You might want to see this." She turned her phone screen toward Lucy. It was a business magazine article, one of the big ones. At the top, a bold headline read, "Ethan Blake, the billionaire behind Fresh Origins." Below it, a full-color image of Ethan appeared, standing on stage at a sustainability summit, dressed in a tailored navy suit, confident and charismatic. Nothing like the flannel-shirted single dad who helped his daughters glue googly eyes onto paper flowers just last week. Beneath the image, a subtitle cut like a blade, "From Tragedy to Triumph, How Single Dad Ethan Blake Built a $1,200,000,000 0 cents organic food empire." Lucy blinked. There were pictures. Ethan shaking hands with global investors. Ethan at a gala, champagne in hand. A sprawling beachside estate. A luxury car collection. Stock graphs. And then, the part that made her stomach twist, the net worth line printed boldly. $1,200,000,000 0 cents. Lucy's mouth went dry. Her hands trembled slightly as she handed the phone back to Miriam. "You didn't know?" Miriam asked gently. Lucy shook her head slowly. "No," she whispered. "No, I didn't." Miriam opened her mouth as if to say something else, but the look on Lucy's face stopped her. With an awkward nod, she turned and left the room. Lucy remained seated for a long time. That evening, just before sunset, she waited outside the park where Ethan usually brought the girls. She saw them from across the path, Ethan gently pushing Emma on the swing, Ella hopping between puddles, chasing a butterfly. They looked like any other family, ordinary, peaceful, but now it all felt staged. A carefully written script. When Ethan spotted her, his face lit up. He waved. But as he walked toward her, his smile faltered. Lucy stood still, her arms crossed, her phone in hand, her shoulders stiff, her eyes unreadable. "Lucy," he said cautiously, "everything okay?" She raised the phone between them. "You lied to me." The color drained from his face. "I did not lie," he replied softly. "I just didn't tell you everything." "Which is exactly the same thing," she snapped, her voice sharper than she intended. "You made me believe you were someone else. A struggling single dad with a borrowed car and old shoes, not a billionaire with a mansion and an empire." The girls ran ahead, distracted by a flower bed, unaware of the storm unraveling behind them. "You let me pay for dinner," she continued. "You let me believe I was helping you, that we were equals. But you were testing me, weren't you?" Ethan stepped closer, eyes pleading. No, it was never a test. I needed to know if someone could love me without the title, without the money. Lucy looked away, her hands clenched. You mean you needed someone to prove they were worthy of you, so you played poor. You hid everything, and you watched how I reacted. He winced. It wasn't like that. Then what was it? Ethan hesitated. I hid because I needed someone who wouldn't care about the hiding. Her eyes filled with tears. I have been lied to before, but this time it's worse, because I trusted the girls. I let myself care. I let myself imagine. Her voice broke. I do not know what part of you was real, Ethan, and that terrifies me. She turned before he could answer. Lucy, please, he called after her, desperation raw in his voice. But she kept walking, disappearing down the path, the rain starting to fall once more. Ethan stood frozen in the park, his heart hollow, and for the first time in years, he felt truly, painfully alone. The rain had been falling since early morning, thin, steady, and cold. It tapped gently against the tall windows of the library like a quiet reminder that the world outside was still moving, even when her heart was not. Lucy stood behind the glass doors, her hands wrapped around a lukewarm cup of tea she had reheated twice, but barely sipped. The gray sidewalk shimmered with puddles, and cars passed slowly, their tires whispering against the wet pavement. She had not seen Ethan or the girls in over a week. Each day without them felt longer than the last. The children's section had grown strangely silent. Books remained on shelves that used to lie scattered. Crayons stayed neatly in their boxes. The tiny chair Emma used to spin in still sat askew, as if waiting for her to return. And every time Lucy passed that corner, she half expected to hear the sound of giggling, of a sticker sheet being unpeeled, or Ella's tiny voice saying, "You forgot the dragon voice again." But there was nothing, just silence. And silence, she realized, could be louder than any noise. She tried to focus on shelving, on tasks, on anything. But at exactly 10:00 a.m., something caught her eye through the misty window, a splash of color against the gray. Her heart skipped. She stepped closer. There, taped carefully to the front door, was a drawing, bright, simple, unmistakably made by a child's hand. Frowning, she unlatched the door and stepped into the drizzle. Her hair dampened instantly, but she did not care. Her fingers trembled slightly as she peeled the paper free. It was a child's drawing. 4 stick figures, one tall man, one woman with bright yellow hair, and 2 little girls holding each of her hands. Red hearts floated above them. The sky was blue, the grass green. And beneath it all, in uneven crayon-written letters, "We miss you, Miss Lucy." Her breath caught. She pressed the paper to her chest, lips trembling, when she heard the sound that had haunted her dreams for days. Little footsteps on wet pavement. "Miss Luce!" She turned around, heart racing. There they were, Emma and Ella, bundled in raincoats, clutching a blue umbrella that barely shielded them. Their cheeks were flushed, and their eyes lit up like it was Christmas morning. Behind them, Ethan stood silently in the rain, soaked to the bone, hair dripping, holding something carefully in both hands. The girls ran to her, wrapping their small arms around her legs. Ella looked up with wide, hopeful eyes. "We missed you." Lucy dropped to her knees, drawing them close. "I missed you too," she whispered, her voice cracking with every syllable. Ethan approached slowly, reverently, like he was afraid she might vanish. "I didn't come to explain," he said softly, pausing just a few feet away. "I came to show you something." He lifted the small wooden box in his hands and opened it. Inside were dozens of tiny treasures. Crayon drawings, finger paintings, folded construction paper hearts. Some were faded, others had bits of glitter still clinging to them. All worn by time and love. "These are from Julia," he said, voice thick. "My wife. The girls used to draw with her every week. It was their tradition." Lucy's eyes filled. Her hand went to her mouth. After she passed, they just stopped. The crayon stayed in the drawer, the paper untouched. No more hearts, no more bunnies with capes, nothing. He looked down at the box. I kept them all, hoping that one day someone would want to draw more with us. The rain began to fall harder then, not cruelly, but as if the sky too had been holding something in. Lucy looked at the girls, so small, so full of love and trust. Then she looked at Ethan, vulnerable, honest, real. Without a word, she stood and then stepped forward. She wrapped her arms around all three of them, holding tightly as if afraid to ever let go again. They stood in the middle of the rain umbrella. Umbrella, no conditions, just forgiveness, just family. The little house just outside the city was surrounded by wildflowers and the distant hum of crickets. It was not grand, nothing like the estates the world thought Ethan Blake lived in, but it was real, quiet, warm, a home. Lucy came often now. She had her own slippers at the door, her favorite mug in the kitchen cabinet, a well-worn seat by the window where she read the Velveteen Rabbit to two sleepy girls every Thursday evening. She and Ethan spent long afternoons baking cookies, messy, imperfect ones, with too much cinnamon and not enough symmetry. The girls loved decorating them more than eating them. There were flower fights, laughter, a kind of healing neither of them had expected. One evening, as golden light spilled through the curtains, Emma curled up beside Lucy on the couch. Her voice was soft, tentative. Can we call you Mama Lucy?" Lucy froze. Her eyes darted toward Ethan, who stood in the kitchen drying a dish. He stopped, looked over, and waited. Tears prickled at the corners of Lucy's eyes. She reached for Emma's small hand. "Only if you really want to." "We do," Ella chimed in, already halfway into a drawing titled, "Our New Family." Later that night, after the girls had been tucked in, Lucy stepped onto the porch. The stars were unusually bright. She closed her eyes and breathed in the quiet. Behind her, the screen door creaked open. Ethan appeared, holding something behind his back. "I wanted to do this before bedtime," he said, his voice playful. She turned, brow raised. "Do what?" He knelt on one knee. But instead of a velvet box, he held out a lollipop ring. Pink, sticky, tied with a ribbon. The girls had clearly nodded themselves. "This is not a proposal for forever," he said. "It's not diamonds or grand speeches." Lucy laughed through her tears. "I'm just asking for bedtime stories. For flour on the floor, for stickers on napkins, for—" He looked up at her, eyes full of hope. "A life that doesn't have to be perfect. Just full of love." Lucy knelt too, right there in front of him, and took the ring with both hands. "Yes," she whispered, voice trembling. "Yes," she said again, eyes shining. "To bedtime stories, and stickers, and all the beautiful mess that comes with loving you." Inside, the twins peeked through the window, squealing and giggling, already planning the wedding, with fairy wings and extra frosting. And outside, under a sky full of stars, a broken-hearted man, a childless widow, and two little girls built something extraordinary. Family, not perfect, but whole. And so, in a world full of perfect profiles and polished promises, it was the small, honest moments, like bedtime stories, sticker hearts, and a lollipop ring, that created a love worth holding on to. Because sometimes, family is not who we are born with, but who chooses to stay when the rain comes. If this story touched your heart, don't forget to like, comment, and share it with someone who believes in second chances. And for more heartwarming tales of kindness, love, and healing, subscribe to Kindness and Love Tales, where every story reminds you, love is not always loud, but it is always enough.